Right, let's give it a test. It looks like we are live. Krista.
What's up?
What's up? Okay, February 3rd. Yep, Krista's back. And then you're going to leave us again next week. So anyways, you guys, thank you for being here. February 3rd, year of our Lord, 2022. It is 1 p.m. Central Time, and you are on another episode of Lunch Talk Live. And this is part of our Contagious Leadership series. We have a special guest today, Julian Reeve, where we're going to be getting into the mind. We're getting into the mind of what he calls the perfect equilibrium. And so we're getting into creative interference, self-awareness, authenticity, and then the strategy of putting all these things together. We'll be right back in a matter of just a few seconds as we give you guys the opportunity to get involved. So, okay, here's the deal. I want you guys to put in your questions, comments. Let us know that you're here, and we're going to get to those at the end. So I want to give our guest the opportunity to speak and really share some information with you.
Yep.
Once again, thank you guys very much for being here. Welcome to Lunch Talk Live. We will be right back with you. And we're back. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome to the program, Julian.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
We have an amazing studio audience. They're very good at clapping for us.
Love it.
We celebrate a lot.
I love that. I love celebration.
So here's the big question, and it's not for you, Julian. It's for Krista.
Yes.
Why weren't you here last week?
Y'all, I turn 40 next Saturday. And so, you know, like when your babies are little and they turn 1, you do like a smash cake and a tutu and a photo shoot. I was like, I'm turning 40. I'm going to go get a smash cake, a tutu, and a photo shoot. And that's where I was taking pictures of myself. No shame. I feel great about it. And although I did not smash the cake in my face, it was delicious. So I was doing a photo shoot last week. And then this coming week, I turn 40 on Saturday. So I will be in Cabo, y'all. And although I love you deeply, I am going to be where my feet are. And I'm going to bury myself in cool breezes and margaritas.
I don't blame you. So ass in the water, toes in the sand.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, you know, it's never the same without you, but we'll have Nikki Cummings here stepping in.
So jelly.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, Nikki, would you? She's like, I'd love to do it. So yeah, Nikki Cummings will be here next week.
Love her.
Stepping into Chris's role as our guest host. But today we are very honored to have Julian. Julian and I met here recently through a mutual contact and a watcher of the show. And of course, one of those typical Lunch Talk Live viewers that jump on the show and don't let us know you're watching. So he was like, hey, right, I've got a great guest for you, and I think you should meet him. He introduced us. They're longtime friends. And when I heard Julian's story, I was actually blown away, and I was extremely excited to ask Julian if he would be a part of our program and share with you guys. So without further delay, Julian, I would love, please give us an introduction. Give us the story of who you are. Let our audience know where you came from into this point, and then we'll get into where you are today and why this information matters for our guests and why we're asking really the audience, and we're asking leaders and people in that place, why are you getting burned out, right? And are you, and we're going to talk about why creative, high producing people burn out. And so we'll just leave it at that and get to you here, Julian.
Just dive in. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here. So yeah, a little bit about me. As you can tell from the accent, I'm British. I am also a proud American, very happy to be here and very grateful for being an American citizen for sure. I've been a music director for 25, 26 years. I've been so lucky to have a really, a successful career. I've traveled the world, I've performed to millions. And within that kind of space, I've founded 4 creative companies. And I've been really lucky with the career that I've had. I met my wife 11 years ago, and we moved to America 10 years ago, 2 days ago, February 1st, 10 years.
Oh, wow. Well,
10 years.
Congratulations. All right. Little happy anniversary.
Yeah, there we go. So we hit New York City for the first 5 years. And in that time, I fell in with the team that would end up producing this show right here. And I was the music director for their show, Bring It On, which Lin-Manuel Miranda co-wrote. And I toured that around the US. And then kind of on finishing that, they were like, okay, well, this guy's, pretty good. I think we can use him for other stuff. And that's when they introduced me to the Hamilton world. So I started on the Broadway production of Hamilton as a rehearsal pianist. And then they asked me to take out the first national tour as the music director. So you've got to bear in mind this was
just a little thing.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things where I went, well, yeah, that happened, and then got on with my life. This was huge, and the time that I joined the show on Broadway, it was at the height of its fame. So when we first took it out on the road, that was the first time it had been outside of New York City, other than the production in Chicago. And it was at the time where Hamilton was still very newsworthy. It was in the news. It was like, it was in everyone's car. It was everywhere. And so it was high pressure stuff. And to that point, I'm 4 months into that role as the music director on the show in San Francisco. I'm 43 years old, and I'm walking home after conducting a performance, and I have a heart attack. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not meant to happen. I'm 43 years old. I've just got kind of to the top of the tree. I want to stay here a minute. And so that really was the beginning of my own journey to what I now call perfect equilibrium.
Okay.
And yeah, it was, I'm very thankful to say that I'm fine. I had 2 stents put in there, fine. Lifestyle changes, all figured out. But the work that I did with psychologists kind of really started me along the line to what I now call perfect equilibrium.
So this all happened in a span of, based on your story here, about a decade or less. This whole process of you getting into this place as the music director of Hamilton and all the growth you had there, and this heart attack at 43.
Yeah, so that time scale is about 5 years.
Oh.
So I arrived in the States February 1, 2012, knowing nobody other than my wife. 5 years later, I was conducting Hamilton. 3 months after that, I had a heart attack.
Okay, got it. And so now we're 4 years into your journey of the perfect equilibrium. So yes, you broke this down for us in these specific 4 steps. So we're talking about, number 1 was creative interference. I don't think there's anybody who is in a creative space that doesn't already understand, yes, right? Yes, creative interference. Number 2 was this aspect of self-awareness. Now, there's a lot more detail you have to it. I'm trying to keep it short here. 3, authenticity, but being authentic in some aspects. You're going to get into details on that. And then, of course, number 4 was this position of strategy of taking everything that has been learned and putting it in place. So please break it down for us. Number 1, how do these steps get into what you call the perfect equilibrium?
Right. So the root cause of heart attack was perfectionism and workaholism. I had no idea that that was the root cause until I did the work through a psychologist. And we basically realized that because of my perfectionism and workaholism, it created low self-esteem. Low self-esteem caused me to make some, should we say, questionable lifestyle choices for a considerable period of time. Smoking, alcohol, drugs, etc. And I abused my body greatly, largely because I didn't feel worthy enough, because of my perfectionism, which led to the workaholism, etc. So perfectionism really was the root cause. So perfect equilibrium was kind of realized through my thought process of what I would give to rewind 20 years and know the knowledge that I know now. And 20 years ago with perfectionism, we didn't really talk about it. I mean, perfectionism didn't really get discussed much before 1990. And even then, it wasn't something that, you know, it's one of those icky subjects that kind of we don't want to get under the hood of, right? And I've also realized that part of the reason why that is that creative high achievers, if they experience perfectionism, value their perfectionism. So they don't want to screw with it.
Good. Oh, that's so good. So as you're talking, I am thinking about the mamas that I work with, the women that I work with, and the women that I work with are very high achieving women, even if, and I don't want to say even if, but my stay-at-home moms have just as difficult of a job as my mamas that go to work and then come home and are moms, right? And one of the things I find it twofold, either they put their perfectionism on a pedestal and like, no, I'm a perfectionism, this is my identity, and they put it on a pedestal as though it's good, or they want to use their perfectionism as an excuse to not ever get out from under the health issues they have created for themselves, right? And so
Yes,
it's funny
absolutely.
because when I talk to my mamas and they mention being a perfectionist, I say to them all the time, I am a perfectionist in recovery. I am in recovery every day. I deal with my perfectionism. I'm a 2-sport college athlete. You do not get to be a high achiever or as a female, be a 2-sport collegiate athlete if you don't have something in you that says, do better, do better, do better, even when you're doing great, right? But I have come to recognize that, and I am in recovery.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that, Krista, because that's actually that's a term that I really kick against, recovering.
Yeah, sure.
And the reason why I kick the reason why I kick against it is that actually we can use our perfectionism to our strength if we know how to.
Yes, I like
it's not all or nothing thinking. It's not I'm a perfectionist, I'm not a perfectionist, let's put that over there. It's figuring out which parts of perfectionism serve you. So rule number 1, write the list. So if you're somebody that has to write perfect emails to your boss, but also you need a perfect fridge, as in it needs to be completely clean, needs to be in alphabetical order, all the stuff.
Then, you listening, Michelle? Anyways, go ahead, keep going.
Then figure out actually how that serves you, and figure out, does the perfectionism in the email serve you? Probably, because your boss is going to be reactive to that. To the fridge example, probably not, because nobody else looks inside of your fridge apart from you and your family. So ask yourself, is it actually worth being that perfectionistic? And here's how I get people to kind of change their thinking with that. You have to tie it to a positive and a value somewhere else. So think about all the time that you could save not putting your fridge in alphabetical order, not cleaning it 3 times a day. Think about all the other things you could perfect. And so
okay. All right. We're going to take a second here because this is really good. I'm not going to get into why.
I love getting this insight and perspective. Obviously, I have a growth-minded mindset, and you're right. There are benefits to having that in you, right? It is one of the factors and the reasons for. I just never thought of it that way, and I love that. I will be shifting my language around that because I see the power in what you just shared. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I did so sorry to interrupt, Rigo, but this actually gets us back into the creative interference. So after the heart attack, I started doing research in terms of exactly what it was that was affecting me. And that research kept going and kept going and kept going. And I realized that actually creative high achievers like me are largely governed by 6 areas of creative interference, which is perfectionism, workaholism, anxiety, stress, loneliness, and low self-esteem. There are all sorts of studies everywhere that kind of point to those 6 things as being real issues for us creative types. And so I started kind of figuring out how I could help others not go through my experience. And I actually started with a TED talk on perfectionism, where I came across a study out of Australia that basically proved that if we are self-compassionate, if we use self-compassion, we can regulate our experience with depression through perfectionism. And my extension of that thinking, and part of the reason why I kick against recovering perfectionists, is that if we're kind to ourselves on our journey to our best self, we can often still keep the goals that we had in mind in place. It's not about, if you were aiming for Mount Everest, and, it's not about going, well, I'm never going to get that high. I'm going to come down to the 3rd highest mountain in the world. It's not about that. It's about the self-compassion on our journey to it. And then the extension of that talk was, how do I get people to the table? Because the biggest issue I've found, and you guys might find this too, is that high achievers, because they've achieved a lot, they value what they have and they don't want to address the issues. So they're much happier in pain, in stress, in anxiety, in all of those difficult situations, because they're still driven to thrive. And so I was like, well, how do I get these people to the table? And the answer is proof. And this is where the psychometric testing comes in. So on the Perfect Equilibrium website, you can take tests. You can take tests for all 6 of those creative interference elements. It's not a diagnosis, but it gives you a baseline knowledge of how affected you are by those issues. And with that knowledge, you can then start to build, really valuable routines and thought processes that actually help you steer away from all the bad stuff, so you can continue to be your best self.
That's so great.
So I'm dropping it in the comments here real quick, but as you've been talking through this, and something that I've just been thinking about myself, and Krista, this is probably going to connect really well with you, but I think a lot of folks, especially today, I look at my wife as an example, who's a stay-at-home mom, but in no way, shape, or form. I had to work from the house yesterday. It didn't take long for me not working there to realize, my God. So, if you don't know anything about me or my family, my wife and I, we have 6 children, 5 of which live in the home still. Technically, so does number 6, but he's always working, so he doesn't come around much. Basically, we're just a storage for free.
A child.
Anyways, I don't want to get into that. Right. But here's the deal. Great boy, by the way. But can perfectionism be misrepresented as compulsive behavior, as a compulsive disorder, where people say, oh, it's just, you have to have it that way? Right. If someone is in a role that does not allow them to express creativity or perfectionism in a positive way, does it come off, and is it represented like a compulsive, behavior pattern?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, we're all governed by a lot of different stuff, and we're not aware that we're governed by it. I would argue yes, to that yes is the answer to that question. And, the key is really to getting to the nub of exactly what affects us. And so that we're very then clear in terms of how we're being affected dependent on what we're doing. So, for example, perfectionism only really perfectionism only really affects me in music. And all of that is associated with, mic drop, the relationship with my mother. Okay, I'm good. See it.
Hey, it's
you know what I mean?
Mother wounds here. We're getting into mother wounds. Okay.
Right. And so she was my first piano teacher.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very musical, very loving, results-driven family, and perfectionism was kind of part of me, probably from around the age of 7 or 8. And, you know, we all have, I think these, you know, I've got friends with compulsive disorders, and they were diagnosed far too late to kind of really sort of put the fire out. It's much more about keeping the fire over there, right? And so, but it still comes down to doing the work to figure out where all of these, the kind of true root of all of these issues. And when we do that, that's kind of really when I think we get to sort of visit the next level, because we can then build strategy to you know, adapt our behaviors and our thinking around that diagnosis.
Yeah. And so even while when you riddled off I think it was 6, right? And the last one was low self-esteem.
Yeah.
As a 2-sport college athlete, I can remember people thought, they would look at me and they would say like, you are so confident, you're so certain of yourself. And that was the image that I had to put out because of the role and the leadership role that I was given as an athlete, as a mom, as now a female business owner. And I feel like, because I've done some of the work, there's still so much to be done. I can see where I have grown in those areas, but I can also see how I'm still that little girl who needs that mentoring, who needs that affirmation, who needs the next step to continue to grow. And so it really is quite the journey, right? I think as long as we're always striving to do better, we can always see room for growth. But there is also a little bit of pride in seeing like where you were and that you're no longer there anymore, but that there's still room to go, right? Self-confidence and self-assurance is not really something I battle anymore, but I can remember at a time where I was so hard on myself that I squashed my own self-esteem in living in that perfectionism and trying to be everything for everyone. Yeah. I love that what you do now is to help people see where they are, meet themselves there, and then take themselves to a better place. That's so powerful. And we all need that. Like everybody needs that.
Well, I need that too, right? And to your point about the journey never ends. No. You know, we never get to the end of a book and go, okay, close. Yeah. I'm done now. All right, great. I'm fixed. Awesome. My life's going to be cool.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen. And so there's this constant evolution, which I love. And you know, if I, to your point, if I look back personally at what my life even was 5 years ago, yeah, when I was conducting Hamilton, to what it is now, and how I think and how I approach things, and you know, the why of doing things, it's fundamentally different.
I mean.
So, Julian, you when we talk, you say establishing the parts of creative interference that are affected through psychometric testing. Help me understand that.
Well, so what I've done is kind of use tests that are already out there that have been written by psychologists, by experts, that basically measure. So what these guys do, because they're qualified to do this, and I'm not, is that you know, they write a test, a study, and then they put it out to their field, and they test and they test and they keep testing and they tweak, and then the results basically then stipulate how affected you are by these particular subjects. So that's kind of what we mean by the psychometric element, as in you're answering questions, and the answers to those questions give you a score that is then on a scale that allow you then to know how affected you are by these issues.
Okay, and then that moves us into step number 2,
yeah,
which we're talking about self-awareness.
Right. Well, you know, again, through my journey, I realized that, you know, I didn't really understand that perfectionism or workaholism was affecting me as badly as it was. And had I known, I would have made the changes to avoid the heart attack. So I'm like, okay, well, how do we become more aware other than taking tests and go, okay, I've got a problem? Because even with that information, you need to know kind of how you're operating on a you know, by second basis.
Okay.
And so how we do that is we develop self-awareness. And part of the reason why it's so important is, again, so Tasha Eurich, Dr. Tasha Eurich is a kind of, she's almost the world leading expert on self-awareness. She wrote a fabulous book called Insight. And as part of her research for that book, she discovered that 95% of us think that we're self-aware. And I reckon if you actually put that out to your audience on this and you ask them to drop a 1 for self-aware,
You know, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that right now. And we might even drop a poll, right? Do you consider yourself self-aware, right? Let us know. For those of you listening and watching, by all means, let us know. Do you consider yourself to be a person who is self-aware? Yes or no?
What's the scale though? Because I think Julian was talking. What was it, Julian? What are we wanting to drop?
Well, let's drop a 1 if we're self-aware, if we think we're self-aware, and 2 if we're not sure. Let's just do it that way.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Well, I'm dropping a 2. Because I'm like, I don't know what is self-aware, right? I know that I always tell people that this journey is interesting. I in my journal recently, and I even said this. Well, I have to talk to myself a lot. That sounds crazy. However that came across, but I
do it all the time, man. My neighbors think that I should have been committed years ago. You know, I just walk around the streets mumbling to myself. I have to do it as part of my process.
You know, I'm 42, Julian, and I look at this and you know, I really thought by this point in my life that a lot more of my life would make sense. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually very much love where I'm at. But I definitely thought I would have a lot more clarity in what this was going to be about. And now you've come to realize where you're having to stop. And I understand where sometimes why people that get into this midlife area of their life, why they could go into crisis mode.
Yeah. Because
we've been running as fast as we can for so long.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden we're like, I think I need to pump the brakes a second. Where are we going?
Right.
Right.
So asking yourselves those questions, or asking yourselves 3 questions, I always encourage my clients to focus on whenever we're doing this type of work, to get them out of the gate. And these 3 questions establish a baseline for the start of your everyday.
Okay.
As soon as you wake up, as soon as the alarm clock goes off, allow yourself 10 seconds just to lie there, right? And you'd be amazed, immediately the brain is off, right? Yeah. Of course, it's like go. I'm awake, let's go. Question number 1, what am I thinking? And get specific. So don't just go, well, my head's busy. Well, I'm thinking about emails. I'm thinking about the marketing campaign I've got to do. I'm thinking about that client I've got to prepare for tomorrow. So you're being specific, right? Okay. The reason why we do this is that you're giving yourself baseline information to decide how to then action that thought process. So if you're thinking about the client that you need to prepare for, then, you know, is there anything else that you need to prepare? So there's all of these extensions off these initial thoughts. Second thought process, what am I feeling, right? So am I blue? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I all of those things? The extension of that is, what am I sensing? And for those people who meditate, this is kind of something that is probably part of your practice anyway. But a really important part, and the reason why it's important is, had I done this prior to my heart attack, I possibly could have prevented my heart attack, because my body was already speaking to me. I just wasn't listening to it. And the reason why I wasn't listening to it is because I wasn't asking the right question. So had I been asking every day, what am I sensing? And you do a body scan. So again, if you're into your meditation, you'll understand this, but you start at the top of your head. And you work down. And the great thing is, you can do this in bed, right? Yep. And it's like, okay, well, I've got some pain in my shoulder. I've got some, you know, my glutes tight, this, that, and the other. Again, baseline information that you can then work from. Because once you know your glute is tight, or once you've got some pain somewhere, you can figure out where it came from, and then figure out new habits and routines to actually avoid that pain in the first place. So those are just 3 really basic ways to develop that self-awareness.
And so the what am I sensing is the third element.
Yes, Correct.
of the feeling and then sensing. Yeah.
Got it. Yep. So what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? That's interesting because that's easy to do in the morning.
Absolutely. And it doesn't,
Yeah.
the beauty about all of this stuff is that, you know, people get so, high achievers particularly, they don't come to the plate to level up because they, unless they see value in it and unless they can get it done quickly.
Or unless they're forced.
Well, okay. Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely.
Right. Because I noticed that as I know that I mean, Krista and I, we talk about this all the time. Our personalities, we are high achievers. We're absolutely finding ourselves in that place of what we're creating and constantly looking at things of perfectionism to get it to a level, setting a standards that we're just not okay breaking. And we have had the privilege of having so many wise people who have come onto this program. And one of the things I've noticed is as a common element is that some of you have learned the most incredible aspects of how to be a better person or perform better in any level of their life or career. And it always comes after a breaking point, which
Absolutely
means
right.
we've been forced into a place where we now have no choice but to make a change.
Yes. And that's the root of my work now. You know, it's like my whole point is to get in front of that situation to prevent the pain point. That's what I do.
That's so good. And, you know, Julian, I find that we are not taught as kiddos to have conversations with ourselves. I deal with a lot of moms, and moms tend to emotionally eat, right? And so when we first start our work, one of the things I will ask them is, well, what kicked this off? Because they'll tell me I was at the bottom of a Doritos bag chip and I have no clue how I got there. And they mean it. They're not like pretending like this is what happened. They're like, I literally don't know how this happened. And so we have to kind of rewind a little bit and say, okay, who said something? What was the environment? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? And this was a new experience for me too, is to sit down and ask myself like, well, why are you upset? Why are you frustrated? Why do you have a headache? Why does your belly hurt? Why do you think this of yourself? And we're just not used to asking ourselves those questions. And there's so much value in understanding why we think what we think, which leads to a feeling, which leads to an action, and that leads to a result, right? And so I love that this is a part of your process, is that self-awareness is having a conversation with yourself and checking in, like check in on everybody else. Why are we not checking in on the most important person in our world? And we have to be the most important, right? Because if we're not well, the energy we put into ourselves is the energy we give out, right? And so
absolutely. And very often, you know, one of the challenges that creative high achievers face when they start the Perfect Equilibrium program sometimes is that they're so used to being on the treadmill running at 100 miles an hour all day, every day. Right, what do I need to do? Let's go. Yeah. But actually, so much of the work is actually the polar opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so it's giving yourself permission to come off the treadmill and allow yourself space to allow the silence to speak. I love that phrase.
Oh my God. So, no, listen, I'm not kidding you. It was a personal letter, so I'm not getting into it, but it was me sharing some things of enlightenment with my wife, and it ended up being like an 8 or 9 page letter. I don't even know if she found it yet, but I wrote it with a pen and paper. So there's evidence of this. But everything that you're saying right now, Julian, was exactly what I was pointing out as I'm looking at this area in our life, and I'm thinking of all these amazing opportunities that are happening with our business and the folks we're meeting. I mean, look what, Julian, I'm so grateful. There's so much gratitude right now in my life that I've been given an opportunity in a platform like this, meeting Krista and building that friendship and relationship to do something like this in this program, and then getting to meet people like you and listening to your stories and truly seeing the authenticity, which we're going to get into in step 3, but in you to truly want to help others reach a place of balance in their life or what you call perfect equilibrium, but more importantly, so that they don't end up broken.
Mm.
And I'm looking at all this, realizing like at some point, we have to give ourselves permission to stop and think and be in silence. I don't think that people that are high achievers or perfectionists, and especially in a creative space, I don't think we understand how to be in silence outside of, and I get areas with meditation, but
Sure.
Even in
Well,
meditation.
yes, absolutely right. And, it starts with, I was going to say it starts with permission, but actually I think it starts a step beyond that, which is acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Ooh.
acceptance.
Ooh.
It's acceptance that we're not machines. We're not meant to run as quickly as we like to. It's acceptance that you do things because you're driven to do things by creative interference.
My humorous side keeps wanting to come out, Julian. I'm sorry. Not every one of you are machines. Some of us, I can't help myself.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll give you that one.
I am sorry. I can't.
No, it's all good, man.
I can't help myself. The child in me won't shut up. So please continue, because you're saying something quite powerful. But when you say like we're not all machines, are we? Are we not all? Some of us are, right? No.
Well, not all of us.
No, we're not. But this is the story we tell ourselves, right? Like, right? Are we? Some of us are machines. We can keep going. This ain't gonna break. We can keep pushing.
Right. Absolutely right. And that was very much my attitude in my 20s. Which is why, I took copious amounts of drugs and drank copious amounts of alcohol, because I was like, well, I can handle it.
Yeah.
I'm the guy. I can achieve this. This is cool. But what's interesting about the acceptance element is that, very often we have to admit that we're being driven by things that actually aren't authentic, which leads nicely into number 3. I realized that much of my achievement as a creative high achiever was based on ego. Right? The reason why
this is such a good show today.
The reason why I conducted Hamilton at a high level was that my ego demanded that of me. Yeah. The reason why I created 2 companies before moving to the US, and another 2 company, actually 1, because another one was being driven by something other than ego. So I created those companies out of ego. And it's like, that's the acceptance. Then you need to give yourself permission for that to be okay. So you need to forgive yourself, number 1. All of this is like, well, yeah, this is the shopping list. This work takes a long time, right? But, so I don't want people to think that this is easy, because it's not.
No, Julian,
it's super important.
It's so important. And Julian, as you're talking, it's really incredible how it's so timely that this conversation is, right? I posted yesterday on my social media, it was a picture of the very first year that I started my health and weight loss business. And it was 2016. I was 133 pounds and just shredded, 6-pack abs, muscle fibers everywhere. I did a photo shoot, took my picture. I just had my pictures taken like we talked about. So 7 years later, I'm 150 pounds as I sit before you today. And the difference in the pictures are significantly different.
It's crazy. I saw your post. It's
insanity. But to go along with what you just said, Julian, is the first picture was so inauthentic. I thought it's what other people needed me to be in order for me to be a good nutritionist, a good leader, somebody in the health industry. I thought that's what I needed to look at. And that was probably the most unhealthy I was physically and mentally. And then 7 years later, 20 something pounds heavier, still fit, still feeling, but I feel like a completely different person.
You look 10 years younger. You look 10 years younger.
Yes. And I think what it comes down to is there's this inauthentic expectation of what we have to look like, feel like, act like, think like, and be like in order to be accepted. And that was 100% ego driven. And as I've done the work, and you said this doesn't happen over time, 7 years later, I feel like I'm in a space where like, oh, this is me. This feels right. This is who I truly am at my core. And this feels good and it feels right and it feels authentic and it feels true and real to me. That is such a different space to live your life in than where I was 7 years ago in what I thought people wanted of me or that I needed to be in order to be successful. Yeah. So this is just so timely, this conversation. I literally just put this up yesterday and I'm living and feeling exactly what you're talking about right now. It's wild.
Right. I love that. Congrats.
Thank you. You made a comment. God, like I said, listen, for those of you right now listening or watching, I really hope that you're writing some of this stuff down. You're checking out Julian's website, taking the self-assessment, and more importantly, sharing this right now with others. Mm-hmm. This is, at least it is for me. That's why I told you guys a long time ago, the reason why we did this and why I've put this program together was because I was ready to level up. And if I could help other people in the journey, then I was going to do it. And so for me and Krista and Donnie, who's sitting over here, this young man who's learning things 20 years sooner, which is great, then, you know, right, he's going to be in the right position, Julian. But this is tremendous. You said something specific. You said, as we get into authenticity, this is being driven by the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And, you know, that knowledge. So I'll give you a prime example. I pushed ahead with a creative project in December 2008 that cost me a lot of money. And the reason why it cost me a lot of money is that ostensibly it failed. It was a concert tour. I won't tell you the artist, don't need to. And I was like, you know what? I want to be a promoter and I'm going to promote this artist and I know what I'm doing, this, that, and the other. And I lost a lot of money. And the reason why I lost a lot of money was that the driver for doing that was inauthentic. Some of it was ego. Some of it was self-esteem, as in if I can somehow make this successful, I will feel better about myself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, we knowing where our thoughts are being driven by is so powerful, because when we have that information, we can then question it. And when we get close to perfect equilibrium is when a lot of that happens subconsciously and we're able to move away from the driver in the moment. That's a little bit down the pike, but it's achievable. And it's achievable. I can say that because I've done it. And I can say that because, you know, some of my clients now feel that, which is amazing. It's that authentic self. Ritu Barsin came up with something called the Authenticity Principle. She wrote a book on it. And she basically worked out that at any one time, we are playing one of three selves. We are either our authentic self, our adaptive self, or our performing self. Now, our adaptive self is when, let's say you're going out to dinner with a wife and you've got a nice steakhouse in your head going, oh yeah, this would be great. She comes along and goes, yeah, I kind of want sushi. Your adaptive self goes, my life is going to be way, way easier if I adapt my authentic choice for the good of this situation. That's adaptive self, right? Performing self is
smart, or just being smart. Well, right? Or just learning a lesson, right?
Sure. Well, you know, that's kind of rule
happy
number
wife,
one.
Happy life.
that's rule number one under successfully married. The performing self shows itself a lot in religion. So a performing self is largely when we feel as though we have to conform our authentic self for the good of others. And some of that can be self-esteem, but it can also be, well, these are my beliefs, but I'm surrounded by people that think other things. Culture can have a big thing with that. Like, for example, me moving to the US, it wasn't a huge cultural shift, but there were definite times that I had to kind of figure what we're talking about out. And it gets worse, obviously, if you're going from a very diverse culture to an extreme of that, then, you know, we can end up in that performing self environment. And the whole key to authenticity is not about just doing what you want when you want to do it, because life would be chaos. I mean, I wouldn't be successfully married if that was the case. The whole point of authenticity is to be in control of those three selves: authentic self, adaptive self, performing self. And being self-aware enough to when we're playing those roles and to be in control of when we're playing those roles. Because often we need to play those roles, but there are often many times that we don't. And that's when we get back to our true authentic self.
So this is like a workplace environment.
Mm-hmm.
To me, feels very much where you really are running through all three of those variations.
Yes.
You know, because you have to, right? And because you have a professional part of your life, you have a personal part of your life. Some people believe that it needs to be completely segmented. Other people believe it needs to be integrated, regardless of where you're at. And even now today, if you're working from home, I seen a recent poll, and quite a few people have been voting on this poll. We're over 10,000 in this particular poll, and 63% of professionals right now are still in a home working environment. How does one achieve these levels of authenticity when you can't even separate areas in your life to be able to play these different roles?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're talking about an environment that doesn't allow you to be authentic. And so question number one is, just because you're working at home doesn't necessarily mean, as in, just because you're not working in an office doesn't mean to say that you have to work at home. Mm-hmm. So if the home environment like stops you from authentically working and being focused and all the things, then change the environment. Go to the coffee shop, go to the beach, do whatever you need to do. Give yourself permission to get out of the house to be your best self. You're quite right in saying that, you know, there are times where we have to play all three roles. But the self-awareness comes in when we discover, and I'm sure we can all think of times where we've been either an adaptive self or a performing self for too long. So, for example, people stay in relationships for way too long because they think that they should, or that it's expected of them. I stayed in a relationship way too long because I thought that's what my parents expected of me, right? Mm. And that was my performing self. That wasn't authentically me. That wasn't me driving that decision. That was being driven by something else. So I totally take the point that there are times that we have to play all three roles. But if at any one moment the adaptive or performing self is speaking way more often than the authentic self, that's when we got a problem.
That makes so much sense.
So good.
So good. I know.
Yeah,
and having and raising little kids, I mean, obviously, and Donnie gets a piece of this, right? Like, he's learning mindset stuff and this at such an earlier age, but
getting a thumbs up, by the way.
Yeah.
I was getting a thumbs up from Donnie over at the board.
I take everything that I learn, and I, you know, now when I approach my kiddos, I can identify, because they're little, right? So they're a little more obvious when they're switching between the three selves. And I can absolutely see when it's something that they truly is what they want, and when they're telling me or talking or acting in the way that they know I want them to, and when they are being considerate and shifting a desire, a decision out of a sibling wants a toy. And so I think we can see it at the lower little kid level, but also what a great tool for us to be able to turn around and say, like, hey, you're not leading through authenticity. You're letting your friends shift and pivot and tell you where to go instead of making the decision for yourself. I think that's really incredible and such an amazing tool for us to have with our leadership, in our leading others in our business and leading our kiddos in our home, is to encourage other people to step into their authentic selves too, by knowing when they're acting out of authenticity. Because we all know when people are and when they're not all the time, but there are times when I know that it's obvious for me and for other people.
You know, this actually brings up a good point, Julian, and I love your feedback on this. But, you know, this what you just said, Krista, we may know our children to a degree, to a point.
Sure.
I think as the more they mature, I really feel that as we have done, we've gotten better at convincing ourselves or possibly lying to ourselves that we are being in the authentic self when we have actually come into a place of the performing self. And that performance has gotten so good, we've believed our own lie.
Yeah, well, I love that, because actually that takes us back to our poll. So earlier on, we were talking about self-awareness and the fact that people think that they're self-aware. The numbers.
Krista was like, 1. Like she jumped it. 1. She put it right in right away. She had no problem. She was like,
these are the numbers, right?
Yeah.
95% of us think that we are self-aware, right? That's been proven through studies and research. The actual number is somewhere between 12 and 15%.
I know.
All right, Donnie, we need a sound. Yeah, there we go. Oh my. Come on, Don. Where are we at on this one? Wow, man. That is.
I have a question for you. So I've often thought this about myself, because I do have many conversations like Rigo with myself in a journal.
Yeah.
And sometimes on the street, it's fine.
Or in the middle of a room with other people who don't know you.
What if, and you can tell me if I have fooled myself or if this is a lack of awareness, which I'm now starting to understand it may be. What if I really like my performing self?
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh my goodness, Chris.
I like her. She's badassery. Like I can get behind her. I can do, like, I like her. So is it bad, or is it wrong, or is it like, what is that?
No, well, I love that. It's like I can use Hamilton as an example here, right? So I'm at the top of my game, and my performing self is like, yeah, this is awesome. Everyone's gonna think I'm amazing, and I'm dropping bombs everywhere. It's like life's amazing. But I am deeply stressed. My perfectionism's raging. My body's like, you can't do this anymore, Julian. You cannot operate at this level. So I could have continued to go, well, hang on a minute. I like this performing self because the ego is basically engaged, and it's basically saying, listen, of course your life is amazing. Who wouldn't want your life? Why wouldn't you want to stay at that level? But doing the work to see which parts of creative interference are speaking allows you only then, I think, once you've done that work, to truly find out authenticity and to figure out your true authentic self. Another one for you journalists out there, and you may already know this, but this was a really, really big one for me. Ask what, not why. So ask the question moving this way. Why am I feeling this? Why is it always me that doesn't get enough likes on social media? Why do I always seem to forget things? And why have I not got enough money? Right? It keeps us up here, and it keeps us in a space of we're not being direct with our thought. We're not being direct with our thought to get a direct answer. What can I do to get more money? What can I do how can I direct questions, move them this way?
Oh, I like that.
Get away from all of this stuff. And when you're writing,
so good.
That's really powerful.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And it keeps you moving forward. And listen, in Enneagram 8, I like forward momentum.
Right. 8 and 7, baby.
Yes. I love what you just said too, because I find, Julian, that and I'm very aware of this about myself. About every 3 months, once a quarter.
Are you really aware, Krista?
I have a meltdown where
are you really aware?
Yes, because the meltdowns are real. The meltdowns are very real.
Yes.
But I know enough of myself that it takes me about 3 months where the wheels fall off and I'm like, I can't do this at this pace anymore. And I have a little meltdown. And then what do? I do the same thing. I kick it in high gear. I go hard again for another 3 months, and then I have another meltdown.
Yep.
And that doesn't serve me all the time. It takes me away. It takes me out of the game. And I know it can't be good for longevity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This
Day-
is good.
So good.
This is good, but
We have 2 more, don't we?
no, well, we had strategy.
Okay.
But strategy, all right, Julian, let's wrap it up here for the group. Chris and I can do this all day.
We could.
Oh,
And Julian,
I can do this all day. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
The strategic side of this is actually pretty simple. And, not to plug services, but, the whole point of coaching, the whole point of going through all of this sort of stuff is that you can use all this information. You can do it yourself, obviously.
Sure.
You can get the baseline of results of the 6 tests. You can start to figure through. So there's on the website, there's all sorts of stuff about the 3 pillars: self-awareness, authenticity, and then strategy is really up to you about how you want to use this information. And kind of what I do with my clients is figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, figure out the results, and put all of that together to basically present a different version of you that gets to level up. So you can do some of that work yourself. We're all into this kind of self-development, the reading, the journaling's really great.
sure.
But reaching out, and the other thing, and something that was really important to me too, was community. All of us, I think, creative high achievers largely think that they are alone in everything that they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really important to me to create a community where we all come together and we do this. We do this type of talk. We do this type of discussion. We do this type of work. Super important. myperfectequilibrium.com if you're interested in that. It's invaluable work. And whether you do it with me or with Riga or with Christo or whoever, I encourage you to get into the weeds, because you will avoid my type of story. You will avoid the burnout. You will avoid the kind of 3 months on, push it hard, need to take a month off to recover. All of those things. Stay curious and get into the weeds, get into the digging.
I love it. And listen, we all know you can DIY as much as you want, but there's something very powerful about having a mentor or somebody who's been there, done that, and can show you a direct path. Making mistakes is great, but I don't know about you guys. I don't really want to make a mistake with my business or with my brain. Like, right?
I thought about this myself, and you mentioned who you work with, and it's interesting, Julian, because what we do and what I do with my clients is I teach them how to build an inbound lead process. I help them learn how to build themselves in a presence, a B2B network like LinkedIn. That's what I do. I look and seek out people like yourself and like myself, because I am always wanting to learn. And I believe that help is all about how you can connect with someone specifically for that community. Because I don't think, I love that King Solomon from the Old Testament said, there's nothing new under the sun. Wisest king that ever lived, most wealthiest king historically as well. And he said, there's nothing new under the sun. It's one of my favorite quotes, because I believe that we are foolish in believing that we are the first and only to ever come across some area of difficulty or barrier or challenge. And in that moment, you can feel so alone. You can feel so isolated. But the number one most destroying story that I had told myself for years that did not serve me was that I was alone. It doesn't change the feeling of feeling alone, but knowing that there is others out there that have gone through it. And it's sad to say, but there's so many out there that have gone through the same pains, the same trials, the same breakdowns. And when we don't seek that, this is where we make the same mistake. And as from humanity's perspective, we are hurting ourselves as a community, as an entire community of humans, by not only seeking it, but offering the opportunity for others to learn from your mistakes. And I thought about this, interesting enough, on the drive here. What am I? I'm not a coach. I'm not a life coach. I'm a man who has made a lot of mistakes. And through those mistakes, I was forced to learn alternative and better methods to do things. I've now learned to seek out others who are wiser than I am in those areas to help me now get better and faster. And I want to teach others what to avoid, not how to do things perfectly, but what to avoid. Because if you can avoid mistakes and you're a person that is always looking to self-develop, then you'll find your own path, because you have to find your own path. It can't be my path. My path was mine. You can't have it. You don't want it. I promise you don't want it. And so to me, this has been one of my most enjoyable times in enlightenment. My note page is scribbly chicken scratch ever. I couldn't write fast enough, and it's freezing in Wichita, Kansas right now, and my studio's so cold. Anyways, my hands are frozen. But this has been incredible. Julian, we will have to have you back on. For those of you guys who did not catch the entire show, you need to go back and watch it again. Here's a couple things for you guys here. You can always go back and catch the rebroadcast on our YouTube page. We will have that in the comics, the comment areas, and on the rebroadcast. Also, you need to check out this website, Julian's company, perfectequilibrium.com. That is .co, excuse me. I thought that was a miss type on my end. Thank you.
The .com was like $1 million. I was like, I can't afford that right now.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't blame you. So perfect equilibrium, no spaces .co. We did drop it in the comments. We'll do it again. But I would love to hear from you guys on what you think this was. Please let us know, you guys, how we can continue to bring value like this to you. Check out Julian. Follow him. If you haven't followed him yet, we will try to get as much information out there as possible so you can find these resources. I guess, I'd like to give you a moment, Julian. Please, can you leave our audience with a final thought from just this time here today?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a thrill to be here. I love conversations like this. It's always lovely to have different perspective. And I love what you said, Rigo, about, none of us are kind of creating anything truly unique. It's all been done before. Perfect equilibrium is actually my thinking in terms of what pieces that already exist go together and go together best to actually help people level up. That's all it is. I think the thing that I'm most taken by today, though, is like the why of you doing this show, the why of my being here too. I can definitely speak to that, and Krista too. Is that there is something more than achievement. There is something more than a line on a resume or an amount of money in the bank. And I'm getting as much value out of conversations like this.
Yeah.
And my clients and the work that I do in the community as I did conducting the biggest Broadway show on the planet.
On the planet.
In fact, more so. So long may it continue. Let me know how I can help, Rigo.
I'd
love to come back, man.
Oh, we'd love to have you back. Krista, what do you think?
Oh my gosh, I love this stuff. So my brain's spinning. I can't wait to process this and take it in and check you out. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. All right. So listen, much gratitude. I cannot express to you, our audience, and those of you out there, just how much I appreciate your support. Thank you so much for being on this. If we give you any value, if you got anything out of our guests, if you think Krista should stop taking off and leaving me alone with these amazing guests, let us know. Please share this with others. And if you're not following any of our pages, please do so that we can continue to serve and give you value in what we're doing. And check us out every Thursday right here, 1 p.m. Central Time. We go live and we bring this to you guys live, by the way, not pre-recorded. It's happening right here in front of you because we want to be our authentic self.
That's right.
We want to be our authentic self. Anyways, you guys, much love. We love you very, very much. Thank you, Donnie. Round of applause for Julian, please. Thank you very much. You guys, we will have him back. I promise. Yes, round. Until then, You guys, please continue to have a great week. Let us know what your thoughts are. Share this with others. And Donnie, I think we're good. We can go ahead and get us out of here. Talk to you later.